We're back! Hello, and welcome back to my channel. I'm probably talking too quietly and we will fix that in post. If you were wondering why I disappeared for so long, the answer is simple. My place of work was shut down for 3 weeks and rather than being productive, I stared at a wall. That was it. But I'm back at work, which means my work ethic is back, and so I'm back here finally shooting my top books of 2020. None of which were read in December because I did not read in December despite having no job. Let's go! The way I'm going to break this video up is simple. I only have about 2 books that I would qualify as worst books of the year, so I will discuss them. And then I will discuss from number 5 to number 1. I actually managed to order and make decisions for my top books of 2020. Anyways, how about we jump right in, starting with the first book of the year that I found incredibly disappointing and did not like at all, and that would be Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me. I'm pretty sure that's the name. This was a really short graphic novel. I read it through Libby, so it was only about 100 pages, and it was 100 pages split like on 2, so it really and truly was only about 50 pages for me. And it follows not Laura Dean, I don't remember the main character's name. It did not leave an impression, but it's a girl in high school and she is dating the it girl, but secretly. And they have broken up 4 or 5 times since they started dating, and always on a holiday. And that's the plot, is she's in love with Laura Dean, but look, it's all in the title. It's all in the title. And I was in a bit of a slump, so I said, you know what, I'll read a graphic novel. I either read it right before or right after Heartstopper, so it was like, another cute gay comic, let's read it. I was so disappointed, to say the least. It was not at all what I expected. First off, it tried to have low-level queer influences throughout it, but would just open up these B-plots and never explore them. She had 2 friends that were dating, and one of them didn't want to come out to his family because it wasn't safe, and his boyfriend was furious with him, and then it was just never discussed again. There was this side plot, which is just one major trigger warning for child grooming, and it's never refuted. This book has a character who goes off and has a relationship with an adult. And the closest the author gets to refuting this, aside from the character being sad at the end of the book, aside from this character being sad at the end, they don't condemn the fully grown man as far as I remember. No, the closest we get is the character who is in the relationship says something about how the age of consent is 16 in some states, and they're very mature for their age. And then the main character saying, that's stupid. That's how that was condemned. There is, clear as day, child grooming in this book, and it's not condemned. As for the second book that I read this year and did not like, it was a major disappointment. Everyone always told me how much I would love it. It's so cute, especially if I loved Red, White, and Royal Blue. If I'm looking for just cute, fluffy romance, this is what I should read, and that was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. I hated it. I hate it. I should have DNF'd it. I have texts with one of my friends and I'm texting them and I'm just like, this is terrible. It wasn't good. I did not like it, and I can see why other people liked it. I really like Stella as a character. I found her much more relatable and nice. Michael, I think, was the male love interest. And everyone was like, you'll love him. He's a simp. He's a simp. He's fantastic. Why wouldn't you love him? He was just a horny man. I had to read so many overly horny scenes. And that's why when I say I want to read a fluffy romance, I feel like I need to very much make it clear that I want it to be a PG-13 romance. Reading the higher end steamy scenes, I just felt such secondhand embarrassment. They were using words that I can't use on YouTube, even if I use them in my everyday life. in bed, and there was chapters, like, I literally skipped at least 2 whole chapters. I think their declaration of love was with underwear. I don't even know. People are like, well, if you didn't like that, I know people who like the bride test. And I was just like, I don't want to. I already read this whole book. I don't want to go through another one. I don't want a book where it's just nonstop sex scenes. Nothing. If you love it, more power to you. I just didn't realize that's what I was getting myself into. And then I kept reading because people were like, well, it's really cute. And I was like, I'm so far, I don't find this cute. I see a woman having breakdown after breakdown and this man figuring out her secret and just hiding it, that he knew it from her. There were so many things that were like hyped up, and then when they finally were like revealed, it was a 2-sentence in passing thing. So the pacing on some B plots was weird. It was a lot steamier than I like in my books, and nothing wrong with me feeling that way, nothing wrong about other people feeling other ways. Either way, just not for me. Didn't like. I think I gave it 2 stars because I did enjoy the writing. I just didn't enjoy the content, if that makes any sense. Anyways, that finally brings us into my best books of the year, the books that I read this year, whether they came out this year or not, that I loved. And let's start real easy and simple at number 5. Number 5 was Heartstopper by Alice Osman, volumes 1 through 3. I read them all in one sitting, so I am counting them as a single book, even though my Goodreads challenge counts them as 3, and then it lets me talk about them all, since I don't know which one was which, because I read them all in one sitting on Tapas. Heartstopper, if you don't know, kind of got real big on BookTube this year. I had a friend recommend it to me. It is apparently a spin-off of, I want to say, Loveless, because I think that's about the sister in it, but it's a spin-off of that, following 2 characters. I believe their names are Nick and Charlie, and it's Charlie has been out as gay for about a year now when he joins the rugby team and starts falling for the big buff meatheady himbo jock named Nick. And I love it because it is then Nick starting to realize maybe he's not straight, and then him and Charlie dating. It's the evolution of them going from friends to boyfriends to telling everyone they're boyfriends, which is of course a whole struggle because Nick's not out yet. He didn't even know until they started dating. And it's so cute. Volume 3 is a Paris trip. Volume 4 comes out next year. I loved it. Where the Kiss Quotient is exactly not what I want in a romance, due to the fact that it was very steamy and heavy, and I didn't want that. Heartstopper is everything. It rots your teeth. It is so soft, and the art style is really cute too. Alice Osman does it all herself, which is really cool. I don't know, it just, even the art style and the cooler color scheme are soft. It warmed my heart reading it. I read them all in one night. Again, like I said, right before or after Laura Dean, I can't remember which. A 5 out of 5. I highly recommend. I'm so excited when volume 4 comes out, because I stopped reading once I hit volume 3 because I like being able to count it as I read it that year. And if I read most of volume 4 prior to the release, I would have felt like I read it in 2020 rather than in 2021. And so I'm cheating and making it a 2021 book so I can put it on next year's list too. Anyways, number 4 is no shock to my friends because I tried to make all of them read this, but might be a shock to y'all because I don't make videos ever. And that is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. This book was everywhere. I have a story going with this. It has been a lot to read since January of last year. And then in September, I was looking for fun books to read. And I was like, I'm gonna read this. And I didn't realize it wasn't out yet. So I'm looking everywhere for it, trying to find it. And I find out it's not even out yet. I managed to get on a library list that had me second in line. So like a week after it released, I was already on it. I read 10 pages of this book on that library. I didn't even finish the first chapter before I put it down on the library. And the next day I made my mom take me to Barnes & Noble and I got it. What I didn't know is, y'all, this is completely besides the point. This has nothing to do with the plot, but the Barnes & Noble Naked Edition, I didn't know was special. And then I got home and it was this instead of just like a skull and a flower. And this is the most beautiful book I own. It was a lot shorter than I thought it would be, I will say that. And so I was worried going and reading it that it wouldn't have enough content. This book, just like Heartstopper, rotted my teeth and broke my heart. For those of you who don't know, this book follows Yadriel, who is, I believe, 16. He has come out as trans in a community that is very strict gender roles down to which magic you get to practice based on your gender. And he has had his coming of age ceremony pushed off indefinitely. It is supposed to happen on your 16th birthday. You commit yourself to the Lady of Death. If you are a girl, you become a healer and get healing magic. If you are a boy, you have a ceremony in which you bind yourself to the Lady of Death in a way that would let you bind ghosts to help them figure out what's holding them back so that they don't go bad and evil. And then you can also free them when they go bad and evil, cut them from their binds to the human world and all that. And it's very important because if there's too many ghosts going bad, they are going to wreak havoc. If ghosts stay too long, even if they don't leave the world in a negative way, they eventually will go bad because they just simply aren't meant to be in our world. So they need those people to pass on. And Yadriel is a boy. He should be doing that, but his family doesn't get it. And so they are worried that if he tries to go through with the boys' ceremony, he will be rejected and that it will cause a major rift in the magic. So we open in the book, Yadriel is performing the ceremony himself, and he accidentally binds the wrong ghost. He is trying to hunt down the ghost of someone who was recently killed, and instead he binds Julian, who is an asshole, but he is our lovable asshole that we adore. And so then, in this like less than 400 page journey, I think it's like 310 pages, we watch Yadriel help Julian tie up his life so that he can move on and be a ghost, not live in the living world. But he refuses to be ready to move on, and therefore Yadriel cannot release him until his business is done. And as they go about helping Julian solve his business, Yadriel realizes this ghost might be cute and I might be falling in love with a ghost. And then you just get angst and sweetness, and it's everything I wanted. And it's with like a fascinating new magic system. And I say new, it's not. It's very much clearly culturally inspired. It's just a new angle that you don't see a lot in YA fantasy. I mean, you can look at my shelves. You know what YA fantasy has typically been about. This is just such a unique take on the fantasy genre, but it's really more of a paranormal romance, and it's just, I ate it up. I read it in a day. I literally bought it, went to work, and then read the entire book after work, and loved every second of it. I highly recommend it. Read it. This author's next book, their next book comes out next year, I believe. I will be reading it. I am hoping it is just as tooth-rotten sweet. I am hoping it is just as thrilling, because I was screaming at this book. This book made me cry. I did not expect to cry going into this book, but I did, and you will too. So read it. Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. Number 4 on my list. Alright, number 3 on my list is going to be very brief because it is a book that you cannot explain the plot of or you will just spoil the book. It is another very short one. I think the digital book that I read was still less than 400 pages, and I'm going to pronounce it wrong. And that is Piranesi, take your pick. Either way, this book, I picked it up because it was on Book of the Month. It wasn't even like one of the main 5. It was an add-on. I didn't buy it because I didn't want to buy any of the main books for that month. But I read its description, and it's like 2-sentence synopsis on Book of the Month is all I'm going to give you because it is what hooked me. Alright, so they changed it. But here's the basics. Whatever little thing I read made it sound like this house was alive. that it takes place in. So Piranesi is the main character, and it reads like his journal entries as he explores what is just referred to as the house. And the house is seemingly alive. It is endless. He lives in one specific room and then just travels into the northeast corridor, the southwest corridor, and it's southwest corridor, like room 400 on the day that the albatross flew across the sky and stuff like that. That's how he labels his journal, because time is meaningless there. Meaningless. And this house seemingly provides his every need as he just continues on with life. And there's tides that wash in and out. The lower levels are ocean. The tides will rise and sweep away the middle section at least once or twice a year. And then above that is even the clouds. And it seems the only things in this house are the birds and him. And that's all I'm gonna say. I really don't know how to stress this enough. This book is considered a fantasy according to Goodreads and Book of the Month and all that. That's how it's. This nonsense was a psychological thriller. I would read it on my lunch breaks at work and spend the entire second half of my shift just reeling. It gets in your head. It weirds you out. You're thinking the entire time. You don't trust a single word in that book. If you like unreliable narrators, read this book. If you don't, you will be so, if they like stress you out, this book will freak you out. Don't read it. I'm rambling because I truly don't know what to tell you about this book. Piranesi lives in this house that's alive, and he is the only guy in there besides birds. And yet, he talks about 13 other people, and it's just all these skeletons of humans he keeps finding, and they're named, like, one is the biscuit box man because he was found with a box of biscuits and cookies and whatnot. And that's all we know about this world, is everything we're seeing through this man's eyes in his journal about the house over this 1 year. Just everything we get is his journal from this 1 year. And it's him trying to recall who he was before the house, because as far as he's concerned, he's a child of the house. So he's trying to figure out how the house works, it's full of statues. So these statues he practically worships, but what are these statues depicting? Because some is like very clearly a minotaur, and others is this woman with bees, and then there's someone holding a gun. But what's a gun? And it's fascinating. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. I couldn't trust him. I couldn't trust anything I will say thing he was talking to. I keep thinking about it. I put it down and I was like, I don't know how to feel about this, so I'm not gonna rate it. I waited like a week or so. I think I only gave it 4 stars, which may make it confusing why it's my number 3 when the 2 below it I gave 5 stars. And it's simply because I think it was only a 4-star book. It was very short. There's stuff I was left thinking about. But the reason I keep thinking about it isn't because of the plot holes. It's because it literally still, I'm dumbfounded. Let's move on because I can't keep talking about this book. Alright. Number 2 may come as a bit of a shock, simply because it doesn't seem like anything else I've talked about. It's not fictional, for example. And that is As I Knew Him, My Dad, Rod Serling, which is written by his daughter. And if you know anything about me, you know I love The Twilight Zone. I adore The Twilight Zone. It is such a fantastic show. The remakes do not live up to it. Do not think about the original Twilight Zone with Rod Serling. This was only about the 3rd book I read this year, in 2020. We'll ignore the fact that I'm shooting this in 2021. Either way, wonderful show. And so few people know anything about Rod Serling. This dude's an icon, but we know nothing about him. And we only know him from The Twilight Zone. And when you read a lot of stuff reading into The Twilight Zone, everyone's like, Rod Serling, dark, twisted man. No, this book is just so full of love, because you find out he was a kind and caring man who loved his family more than anything. The Twilight Zone was a major part of his life, but she never saw him as the Twilight Zone man because he was her dad, this happy, silly, happy-go-lucky guy. And yet he was still so intelligent, and she reveals that she can remember him wanting to make the Twilight Zone something and moving to California to help write it so that they can make it and everything, and how it was shocking that they wanted him to be the narrator and whatnot. And so it's just a very interesting look on how the Twilight Zone was made, but also just the man behind it, because everyone says he must be a dark and twisted man, but in truth, he wanted it to be deep insights into the cultural psyche. I'm not gonna lie, I read this book a while ago, so I'm having a hard time like thinking of words other than I loved it. I just remember really loving it. Like when I was scrolling through what books I read this year to make this list, and I realized it was on my list, I knew it had to be in my top 5 because I just loved it. I was crying reading this book. I was crying reading a biography for a man I've never met in my life, and I've only gotten into the Twilight Zone in recent years, but it was just, it talked about how he was using it as social activism, how they wanted him to come back for the reboots and stuff, and he didn't really know if he would. And then it's just, so many people, this is what it was. You read biographies of celebrities and everything, and they're very rarely from a family point of view. And so they're still seen as these great, amazing, untouchable people. But this just made this man from a terrifying show that you would think has to be just disturbing to be around, the warmest, happiest, kindest face in media. And it was really interesting to read and find out he's nothing like what you would expect. And it warmed my heart. It was very interesting to see the behind the scenes of the Twilight Zone. It was very interesting to know a little more about him. And it really did, a large portion of it didn't even discuss the Twilight Zone. It was just like, we went sledding and adopted dogs. He loved his wife more than anything in the world. He would come home and play imaginary games with me. And I didn't even think of him as the man who wrote giant scary monster stories and stuff. And that was so good. It said it broke down that you must suffer for art. If you like these things, you must be twisted. He was just human, and it was very nice to see that. And it also just kind of started my realization that maybe I really like reading nonfiction, but only if it's about very specific things. And then finally, the moment you've all been waiting for, my book of the year. What was my favorite book? Give me a second to grab it off my shelves and I will tell you. My book of the year is not Sky Beyond the Storm, because I haven't finished reading that, because I do what I do with every series finale, which is read 100 pages and then just don't touch it for a month because I'm scared. So instead, my book of the year, to no one who has spoken to me surprise, is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This book broke me. I think I've talked about it on this channel. This book broke me. If you know, one of my favorite movies of all time is About Time. And it's because it ends on this message of life is finite and it's the little moments that make it worth it. Because it's a man who can time travel at will to any moment in his life and just relive it and try to fix all his mistakes. But he realizes life is pretty and we love life because it ain't perfect. So find the little joys in life and you'll be able to live each day happily. And Addie LaRue takes that same concept that left me in tears for a full hour after that movie, and it compacts it in this book. But it chucks on great existential fears of anyone around my age, especially if you graduated during the pandemic. I'm not gonna be good enough. I don't have enough time. How am I ever going to live? It takes all those existential fears, puts them in a book, and then gives it the same meaning as About Time. And I don't know. I understand a lot of people were like, I don't know. It stays heavily in Europe. It doesn't. And I get the complaints about it. I hear them. But I don't know. I just related to it. It hit. It takes these existential fears and it compacts them, but it's like these fears are valid, and the main characters are two people consumed by these fears. And you're valid. but they learn to live with those fears and learn to love life despite them. And I just lost it. If you haven't been, if this is the first video on BookTube you have watched in like a decade, here's a summary of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. You follow Addie LaRue. Given. She was born in the 1700s France, and she doesn't want to live and just die a farmer's wife. She wants something more. She wants adventure in the great wide somewhere. So much more than this provincial life. She really was living her Beauty and the Beast best life. So, rather than marrying a monster though, she makes a deal with basically the devil to live forever, but the catch is no one remembers her. They do not remember her the second she leaves her room. She cannot leave a mark, so if she spills wine on their carpet, they're not going to think, oh, when did I do that? It's not even going to be there. No one can see her. She cannot leave writing at all. And so we catch up with her in, I think, about 2017. We catch up with her in about 2017, and she's basically just been going through the centuries trying to inspire artists, and day by day making them remember her, picking up with art they left off on, and trying to inspire them, and that's how she's trying to leave her mark on the world. The problem is, she's still deeply lonely because she can't form any meaningful connections. And so is life worth it if you can't form connections? If you can't touch people? And that's when she runs into Henry, who is terrified that he's not living his life to the fullest, just like her. But he remembers her. And suddenly, don't go into this expecting a, like, adventure across Europe through the centuries. It's not. It is a very compact story within New York of two people who just truly understand each other, falling in love and figuring out what it means to live a fulfilling life. And I gotta tell you, reading this in a pandemic, when my life fell into shambles because I graduated into an industry that cannot function during a pandemic, it hit so hard. I read it. If I had read it any other year, I think it would have made my list. I don't think it would be my top book. It's not even really probably my top objective favorite Victoria Schwab book. That probably still goes to A Gathering of Shadows. That book is phenomenal. But this one just hit. I read it at the right time. It's beautiful writing. It's V.E. Schwab. Of course it's beautiful writing. I recommend reading it. If you're really sad, maybe not. I will admit it broke me. About time. I was crying for about an hour after finishing that movie, Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I was crying for about an hour after. I was texting my friend after I finished it because they read it. I got it from the library, and about 2 days after my like physical copy showed up, so I gave my friend my library login, and they finished it in like a day and a half, and I hadn't finished. So I sat down and I read it all, and I text them, and they're like, "Are you good?" And I'm like, "I am on my floor." I was literally flat across my floor, just crying. I wasn't even like sobbing. It was just tears streaming down my face. I'm just like, I'm numb inside, and yet I'm crying. I don't understand it. That's what this book does to you. And that is why this book that I almost held upside down is my book of the year. I highly recommend it. Read it. That's the end of this. Alright, that brings me to the end of this very rambly video because I don't know how to explain books, and I picked a lot of books that have a lot of very spoiler-heavy synopses, if that's a word. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you are not subscribed, I'm not going to tell you to because I don't want to be that YouTuber on video 3. Anyways, in case you didn't know, I do have 2 other social medias. I forgot I had them, so it's okay if you didn't know. They're never updated. I'm gonna try to though. 2021 resolution. That will not hold. But maybe if you follow it will. If not, I'm hoping to have another video up next week. If it's not up then, it will be up eventually because I do only have 2 days to film and I'm kind of cramming it all in right now. So, expect my 2021 reading resolutions coming to you soon. Expect a little surprise video related to that coming to you after that at some point. Thank you through... I can't even speak anymore. Thank you for sitting through this mess. I was rambling. And I cannot wait for this next year. This is gonna be a mess. Stick with me through it. Bye.